Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 2 of season 2 of Beyond the Crease, a grassroots cricket original podcast. I'm your host, Behram Qazi, और आज मेरे साथ हैं BBC's very own and your friendly neighborhood comedian, Aatif Nawaz. Aatif bhai, क्या हाल चाल है? Doing all right?
Yeah, Zabardast, yaar. At the time of recording this, is one day to go to the finals day of the Blast, so very excited.
Yes, and that's exactly why we have you over here. Viewers को भी बताते चलें कि because Atif bhai is covering the Vitality Blast, आज के episode के अंदर we're going to talk about all the Pakistanis who were participating in the Vitality Blast और सबकी performance पे individually भी बात करेंगे. Start करते हैं आतिफ भाई none other than शाहीन शाह अफरीदी से. ठीक है, इंजरी से वापस आए after that T20 World Cup, won the PSL with the Lahore Qalandars, wasn't looking at his devastating best with the ball, मगर बैटिंग में शानदार कारकर्दगी दिखाई शाहीन ने. क्या छक्के लगाए. पीएसएल भी, आई थिंक, लाहौर की विक्ट्री अल्टीमेटली you'd have to put it down to the knock he played in the final. And then Vitality Blast में भी, you look at his numbers and 76 runs at 150 plus. I take that, right? That's proper ball striking. और उसके बाद, even though he had a slow start with the ball somewhat, बाद में जाकर we saw him back to his very, very lethal best, right? 4 wickets in an over, then ended up with 22 wickets in 14 innings. Economy भी 9 से नीचे थी. So would you say that Shaheen is now officially back to peak Shaheen, या अभी कुछ और रास्ता बाकी है?
मुझे लगता है यार ये transition बहुत अच्छी रहेगी शाहीन के लिए. Like it's a great place to come for confidence, especially a fast bowler. These batters, क्योंकि जिस तरीके से T20 Blast का season होता है, ये like आप 4-day cricket खेल रहे हैं और फिर T20 cricket खेल रहे हैं और फिर 4-day cricket खेल रहे हैं और फिर T20 cricket खेल रहे हैं. Like you're going back and forth a lot. Not all the players. Some players are specialists in white ball and some players are specialists in red ball. But generally, you have some players doing overlap and you're training overlap. So it's very difficult to adjust to a bowler of the class of Shaheen Afridi because he is phenomenal. और जब वो अपनी full peak पे नजर आता है Nottinghamshire की तरफ से, तो वो क्लास नजर आती है, वो गैप इन क्लास नजर आती है, क्योंकि काउंटी का बहुत अच्छा स्टैंडर्ड है, लेकिन वो जो गैप है शाहीन की क्लास में और एक एवरेज काउंटी बैटर में, वो नजर आता है बंदे को देखने में. तो he couldn't get them to finals day sadly, but he had a fantastic impact. और ऊपर से यार कमर्शियली उसकी बहुत जबरदस्त इम्पैक्ट हुई है नॉटिंघमशायर पे. लाइक शुरू में मुझे पता चला था कि उन्होंने अपनी टिकट प्राइसेस £29 की हैं, which is very expensive for T20 Blast nights. It's considered expensive. I did a lot of work for the Birmingham team, Birmingham Bears. उनके बारे में भी बाद में बात करेंगे. उनमें भी एक पाकिस्तानी शामिल था. But like they price it anywhere between sort of 10 and 20 for, like, depending on where you're sitting. So £29 was very, very steep, but they got people coming into Trent Bridge and their out grounds to see Shaheen. And yeah, he was definitely an attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. And एक दो चीजें मुझे ये बताएं कि सबसे पहले तो you obviously caught a few of his games. कितनी excitement होती है शाहीन के पहले ओवर की, like as a spectator and fan, because we are all fans at the end of the day. How excited are you to witness that? और जो 4 विकेट थी वो थी तो बर्मिंघम के खिलाफ ही, तो वो कितना एंजॉय किया आपने?
यार मैंने बहुत एंजॉय किया, लेकिन ये एक बात याद करानी चाहिए सबको कि वो मैच बर्मिंघम फिर भी जीत गया था और नॉटिंघमशायर हार
बिल्कुल.
गया था. So he did get the 4 wickets, and then the captain had a very difficult decision about when to use
Perfect day for you then, right?
Shaheen's overs.
Shaheen
It
got
was hot,
wickets and Birmingham won.
but the Birmingham team was very, very strong. I mean, it's quite shocking they didn't make it to the final, but we'll talk about them later. I mean, he is devastating. He reduced them. Their top 4 batters are very strong batters. Like Birmingham is unlike most teams in the T20 Blast. They have a lot of class, a lot of really, really quality batters, and he just went right through them. Even the form players like Dan Mosley, I've had a chance to watch this guy hit sixes and fours and just play mind-blowing innings, and he had no answer to Shaheen. And यार वो फर्स्ट ओवर वाली बात ना थोड़ी सी, लाइक उसकी मार्केटिंग है, उसकी थोड़ी हाइप है, और जब वो 10,000 लोग इंस्टाग्राम पे फोटो लगाते हैं और ट्विटर पे पोस्ट करते हो, आजकल नया क्या आ गया, थ्रेड्स पे पोस्ट करते, लाइक oh, the Shaheen first over, and then you start to think, well, if I put a lot of analysis into, is it really that impressive? And then you start to think काफी अरसा हो गया है, he hasn't, and then he does that, 4 wickets, he does that, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, there's a reason for all this hype. So devastating bowler. I'm sure they'll be looking to try and bring him back next year as well if they can afford to. But he was brilliant and he was very exciting to watch.
Yeah, pretty much cemented that first over legacy, you'd have to say, after those 4 wickets, pretty much. Magar khair, interesting cheez ye, Atif bhai, that Shaheen was in fact not the most successful Pakistan bowler on display in the Vitality Blast. And that was his teammate, Lahore Qalandar's teammate as well, Zaman Khan. उतनी innings में 14 innings में जिसमें शाहीन ने 22 आउट किए, Zaman Khan actually got 25 wickets, even bested him with respect to economy. So पूरे तरीके से शाहीन से बेहतर परफॉर्मेंस थी, एंड इट्स जस्ट दैट स्लिंगी एक्शन जो मेरे ख्याल से a lot of English batters, they just couldn't read that or pick that up as quickly as they should have really. How would you rate this performance by Zaman, and were you surprised? Because इससे पहले चले PSL ही खेला, शानदार खेला है, he's been amazing at the PSL, but wouldn't you think that this could just be that sort of kickstarter moment in his career which could really help him develop further as a bowler?
Well, it's going to be a breakthrough performance for sure for Zaman, because he ended up the third top wicket taker. There's still 1 day to go and 3 more games to go at the time of recording, but he finished third top wicket taker, which nobody had predicted. This is the first time that Zaman has played any league outside of Pakistan, any professional league outside of Pakistan. So he's played for Lahore Qalandars, obviously, in the PSL, but Haider Ali, his teammate at Derbyshire, he's played in leagues all over the world. Heather has been everywhere. If you go to Heather's Crick Info page, you'll see 7 million teams because he's played everywhere. But if you go to Zaman's, it's very bare. He hasn't played in very many places, but that's going to change after this performance, because he was devastating, as you say. That slingy side-on action is very, very effective, particularly at this level. When players are looking to up the strike rate, because Zaman is typically bowling in the power play or at the death. So both those times, batters are looking to attack you, and it's very difficult to attack if a bowler is very consistent, hits a very good length, bowls those Yorkers. And he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. He was a revelation. They really loved him at Derbyshire as well. So, I'm sure they'll be keen to try and bring him back. There was a big hole in the Derbyshire lineup, and Heather came in. There was a lot more hype around Heather. He was doing a lot of the press and the promo. Maybe Heather's English is a bit stronger. Maybe that's why. But he was doing a lot of the press, and Zaman was kind of like sort of almost also there. But he was absolutely brilliant, and probably the best of the Pakistani players in this year's T20 Blast.
Yes, absolutely. I think the word revelation really, sums it up nicely. That's exactly what he was. You brought up Haider Ali. It wasn't the best of starts for him in his time in England. Or शुरू में तो बल्कि काफी तनकीद भी हो रही थी. A lot of people were critical, but then he found his feet. He started to get runs, and now he's actually scoring at quite a good clip, and he's back in form, right? Abhi county championship में भी fourth innings में वो division 2 के अंदर he played that knock. Derbyshire lost, but fourth innings knocks are never easy, and ultimately ended up striking at 138 and 335 runs. Not a terrible season, but do you think Haider Ali is capable of more, and can he potentially make a return to Pakistan's T20 outfit? क्या आपको लग रहा है ऐसा हो सकता है?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a gap. There's a lot of distance for Heather to cover. Heather is very highly rated in the Pakistani setup, so people are very acutely aware of how talented Heather is. लेकिन ये वही बात आती है जब आपकी performances international team में, national team में, उस level की नहीं होती जो आपके ऊपर expectation है, तो फिर बहुत मुश्किल है कि आपको foreign chance दिया जाए. And it was a solid performance from Heather, but it wasn't a groundbreaking performance. As you say, 300 odd runs in 14 matches in T20 cricket is nothing to be sniffed at. But at the same time, it's not what James Vince did. James Vince was a top run scorer. He scored 600 plus runs in the same number of matches. So, Heather's still got some work to do. When he's good, though, he looks really good. There were 250s that he got in the Blast, which were, I forget against which teams, but they were phenomenal to watch. Just that exciting, entertaining, belligerent batting that you expect from Haider Ali. I think the path to Team Pakistan is a little bit longer for him. This isn't the one that's going to get him in there, but I think certainly Derbyshire will look at bringing him in again, because again, just like Zaman and most of the Pakistani players, in fact, he was very well liked, and everybody knows what he's capable of. And of course, as you say, he offers value in the county championship as well, in 4-day cricket, in first class cricket. That is more interesting to me, क्योंकि अगर पाकिस्तान की हम आगे रेड बॉल क्रिकेट को देखते हैं, और अगर वो इंग्लैंड स्टाइल अप्रोच, एग्रेसिव किस्म का बैज बॉल स्टाइल अप्रोच adopt करने की कोशिश करेंगे, Heather is that kind of batter. Obviously, it's going to be difficult because Pakistani press is obsessed with consistency, and it's very hard to expect consistency for batters who play a variable style. But at the same time, the style of his play would fit in very nicely in Pakistan's, a Pakistan 2.0 Test cricket. So, watch this space for Heather. I think he's going to do something that's going to surprise people.
Yeah, I sure hope he does because I'm definitely a fan. He's a very attractive bat. और मैंने एक चीज नोट की आतिफ भाई that Heather, when he wasn't too successful not too long ago, he was a bit over reliant on that big heave over cow corner, जो कि Heather का एक signature है. But at his stint or during his stint at Derbyshire, we've seen that we all knew he had impeccable range, but we've seen him bring those shots out a bit more, the cut specifically as well. Do you think that maybe having Mickey Arthur as coach, who is really, really, well renowned when it comes to player development, that is helping him? And same goes for Zaman. How much do you think those two guys would be benefiting from having Mickey Arthur around?
I mean, anybody who works with Mickey Arthur, in my opinion, benefits from that collaboration because he's got that experience of being in that Pakistan setup and understanding the kind of scenarios Pakistan as a team find themselves in all forms of cricket. It can't hurt their chances going forward as well, playing within the Pakistan team. Like theoretically, they want an advocate by just sharing that space with Mickey. But again, Mickey is a very astute man, and he's aware that to push for national selection, you need something stronger. But I really do think a bit like, well, I know we're going to talk about Hassan Ali a bit later, but like a bit like Hassan Ali's resurrection, I think that's the route that Heather's going to take as well through red ball cricket. But yeah, no, the Mickey Arthur Association is huge. And Mickey, by the way, it's worth saying, has done a superb job because they lost Shan Masood and they loved Shan Masood at Derbyshire. He built this whole plan around Shan Masood, and then Shan obviously went off to play for Yorkshire. I know we'll talk about that in a bit, but like it was a very difficult hole to fill. Like Shan is a very whatever people think of him and his performances in the national team, he has a lot of gravitas. And he's a brilliant leader and an excellent T20 cricketer and an excellent 4-day cricketer. So that was a very difficult spot for Mickey, and I think he came through it quite well.
चलें, I won't delay this any further. I know you're dying to talk about him. काफी दफा आप उसको mention कर चुके हैं. And of course, why wouldn't you? You were working with the Birmingham Bears, and one of their marquee signings was Hassan Ali, yet another Pakistani pacer performing in this year's Vitality Blast. Quite a good performance. क्योंकि सिर्फ 5 games खेली हैं हसन ने, maybe उतनी highlight नहीं होगी, but still 9 wickets in 5 games. And what's important over here is that his economy was below 7. Now that is quite remarkable. It's been tough for Hassan Ali, let's be honest, ever since he dropped that catch versus India, not India, versus Australia in that T20 World Cup. A lot of people have had their pitchforks out, or Hassan Ali, has had to face the brunt of a lot of, you could say, how do I put this nicely? A lot of BS. I'm just going to use the acronym, sure. On social media as well. So, performance की तो उसके बारे में बाद में बात करेंगे. I just want to talk about Hassan Ali, the character. You did a video piece with him as well. You've witnessed him firsthand, what he's probably like in the dressing room. We've seen a few videos as well. क्या influence रहा है हसन का in that Bears dressing room? And आप तो इतने close to the action है कि बताएं कुछ अंदर की stories. What sort of impact has he had, on that team?
Yeah, I really like Hassan. Like I'd never met him before this season. The first time I got to meet him, he was sort of slightly not suspicious, like apprehensive of me because I don't know what his experience of Pakistani cricket journalist has been before, but it probably, I'm going to say, wasn't very positive just based on the way he approached me. But I like to think I diffused any tension there was, and then we got to know each other a little bit. He's a very talented guy. He's a very funny guy, very jovial. They really liked him in that Warwickshire/Birmingham dressing room. Like at Edgbaston, he really, made himself part of the fabric of that team just by, being his jovial self. They really loved him. Like there was a 4-day game where he bowled a spell on day 4 to win Warwickshire the game. And there was, county championship games aren't that well attended. Well, generally, sometimes they're very well attended. But anyway, on this occasion, there were maybe like 700-800 fans at Edgbaston, which is like a 25,000 seater stadium. But like after he took his wicket, he did the sprint around. He took the last wicket. He did a sprint around the ground. He found the fans that were in the stand. He went and just celebrated with them, and it was really cool to see. And like he gave nicknames to all the players, which they still use. Like Ollie Hannon Dolby, who's a fast bowler for Birmingham. He's like 6'8" or 9" or something, just ridiculously tall. And yeah, so Hassan, I think, called him the Longfellow. तो उसका नाम ही पड़ गया,
that was
the
in your
Longfellow.
video.
Yeah,
आपकी
long
जो
fella. उसका
बेटी होती है
नाम पड़
हसन के
गया, like,
साथ.
so that was the thing. And then, like, yeah, बहुत मजेदार character है. But the thing that struck me the most is उसकी determination एक दूसरे level पे. Like, everything for him was about getting back to the Pakistan team. I want to get back to that Pakistan team. I want to show what I'm capable of. And obviously he did that because he got selected for Test cricket for Pakistan, which I was so, just as somebody who got to know him a little bit, I was so pleased for him because that's what he wanted. Um, you know, I, I'm not going to say I was surprised, but at the same time, it wasn't like he put in this groundbreaking performance. Yeah, you're absolutely right. He did get wickets in his 5 matches, but Birmingham generally feels slightly underserved by their overseas players, whether it was last season, whether it was this season. I mean, they had Glenn Maxwell,
Mhm.
and he didn't really, like, there wasn't that huge big show performance that you kind of want. I mean, there were sparks of it, but I mean, even I think he'd agree that he couldn't quite deliver, you know, on that hype. And Hassan certainly delivered more, but there was because of the injuries and the little gaps, and the fact that they couldn't get through to finals day as well. It was just like, it wasn't this like break, like, Zaman Khan is definitively, he's put in a breakthrough performance, even though Derbyshire didn't make it.
Mhm.
But with Hassan, I was like, it's touch and go. But I was so happy to see him selected for that Sri Lanka Test series. I think like there's a resurrection there. I'm hoping he'll put in a strong performance for the national team as well.
Yeah, we're all hoping for a Hassan Ali redemption arc. And I mean, he's quite handy with the bat too, right, Atif bhai? Like, particularly in T20 cricket, आकर छक्के वगैरह लगा जाता है, hits a long ball. Or if we talk about his cricket, he has one stock weapon, which he does that better than a lot of people or a lot of bowlers in this world, the way he jags that back ball in. वो जिस तरह आकर इन स्विंग करती हुई टेल करती हुई बॉल आती है. We saw that a couple of times this time around in the Vitality Blast and even the county championship. And just on his cricket in general, do you think that Hassan is back to or can be back to that level soon? जिस तरह वो वापस कम बैक करके आया था साउथ अफ्रीका के खिलाफ टेस्ट सीरीज में. He's been there before. He's been down in the dumps और उठकर वापस वो आया है वापस. क्या आपको लगता है कि ये जो स्टिंट था बर्मिंघम के साथ, this can potentially help him do exactly that once again?
Yeah, it remains to be seen is the truth. Like, I can tell you that he's obviously put in a lot of hard work. He trains a lot. Like the boys at Birmingham, they've got a very sort of aggressive coach, and he insists on everybody putting themselves through the paces. There's a great work ethic there as well. They spend a lot of time at the nets. जब आप Birmingham के ground Edgbaston में जाते हैं, the commentators and the presenters and stuff, we park next to the training ground, and like
Mhm.
every single time I get there, bear in mind I get there like 3 hours before a game. Like he was there, Hudson was there almost every single time. Kya haal hai Aatif bhai? I'm like, yeah, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. All that, every single time. Like it just showed me that this guy's got a serious work ethic. He's got a very serious goal. It's all about staying strong mentally because, like, in the social media age, people are going to
Mhm.
attack you. Like nobody will ever let him forget that 2021 World Cup, right? It sucks because it's not, it doesn't help anybody. And like anybody who thinks it's cool to send players messages like that, shame on you. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it at all. So it makes me angry, but it tests the mental resolve of the player. Like, can they come through that? This is a huge part of being a modern sports person. Can you handle that abuse that comes from anonymous trolls online that will potentially be never ending because you're
Mhm.
constantly under the spot? You could be playing county championship division 2, but someone somewhere is now filming it and it'll be up on Instagram, it'll be up on Twitter, and people are going to see it. और मजाक भी आपका होगा, सब कुछ होगा.
Mhm.
आप उसके साथ कैसे डील करेंगे, कैसे अपनी
बिल्कुल.
ज़हनी ताकत दिखाएंगे? Like, this is what I want to see from Hassan. I think he's got it in him. It remains to be seen what happens.
अच्छा, ऑन दैट सेम नोट, लोग भी मेरे ख्याल से काफी जल्दी भूल जाते हैं. दिस इज द गाय हु वन पाकिस्तान द चैंपियंस ट्रॉफी, राइट? इफेक्टिवली पीपल विल रिमेंबर दैट आमिर स्पेल, बट what they should really remember is the middle overs mayhem that Hassan Ali caused in that champions trophy. When you need a wicket, you go to Hassan Ali. फ्रेज तो वही कॉइन होया था, अब कई फास्ट बॉलर्स पे यूज हो जाता है, मैं खुद यूज कर रहा होता हूँ, मगर कॉइन तो वही हुआ था. बट जनरली इस तरह की चीजों से डील करना आसान होता नहीं है. यू नो दिस बेटर देन एनीवन, आतिफ भाई. आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू गो बैक टू द मनकड इशू, बट आई
Yeah,
कैन से दैट आई कैन रिलेट. I can say that I can relate as well. I've been there now as well, so we have that in common. But a thorough professional on and off the field, you'd have to say.
yeah, and just a very nice guy. And like, I know it probably doesn't mean anything to anybody, but like to me, I spend a lot of time with a lot of cricketers, and like every time they're nice people, which you'd be surprised it isn't all the time. It's about half the
Hmm.
time, but like every time they're nice people, I genuinely root for them. Like there's a player I met in New York who's playing for the Seattle Orcas in the Major League Cricket, and like nobody knows about him. It's very inconvenient to watch Major League Cricket in England. You could aapke
Hmm.
1:30 match ho rahe hote hain. But I'm like,
Bilkul.
I'm keeping tabs on the scores. I want him to succeed. Like I think when you meet somebody who's nice, you want to see them succeed. And shout out Aaron Jones, by the way. So, but yeah, I'd love to see Hassan do well because he's earned it. He's very talented. He's very skilled. He's given a lot to Pakistani cricket, and yeah, let's hope this is a renaissance.
Yeah, we sure do hope so. And you spoke of nice guys. I have a similar cricketer, Shan Masood, really nice guy. Looks like a proper gent. Love to hear him talk about cricket as well. He had this stint with ESPN Cricinfo in the middle when he wasn't part of the team. I thought he was phenomenal representing Pakistan over there. Shan Masood excelled at Derbyshire last season. He was slamming 50s and hundreds left, right, and center. Even in the T20 blast, he had very good numbers. हालांकि ज़्यादा बेहतर performance जो थी वो red ball cricket में थी. But this time around, 11 innings, 189 runs, and just a strike rate of 124. Would you say that maybe, the pressure of captaining such a big team like Yorkshire could have played a part? Or the fact that he wasn't really opening, was he? Batting order काफी shuffle कर रहा था Shan Masood, and he was batting different areas of that order, or maybe that had a part to play. What's your assessment of that whole situation?
Yeah, it was always going to be a challenge because Yorkshire is going through a process of rebuilding a bit like what's going to happen to Leicestershire next season, very sadly. But it's a very difficult it's a difficult thing to come into that team to try and unify, to
Hmm.
try and when you walk into a dressing room of players that you've not really spent a lot of time with, even though when I spoke to Sean about this, he said, no, I know so and so and so and so, and we work
Hmm.
together here and we play together here. But at the same time, I mean, you have to understand, like you're new into this dressing room, you're new into this pitch. He's got a great, sort of role model slash guide there in Darren Goff.
Hmm.
Because Darren Goff was fantastic in the support that he offered Sean and the confidence that he had in Sean. There's no other way to put it. It was a disappointment for Yorkshire. They expected more from Sean, the leader, but he was very selfless in the way that he played. As you say, he wasn't there to try and rack up stats for himself or to rack up 50s and hundreds and things like that, even though he did get a few in the county championship. I think
Hmm.
he was really thinking about what he could do for the team. If I've got one critique, and like who am I to critique Sean? But at the same, if I had one critique, I think at times maybe there was too much out of the box thinking, and you need to kind of just stick to your guns a little bit. But you can't really fault the guy. He's got a great cricket brain. He's a brilliant analyst, as you say, in that stint with ESPN. He did a stint with us on the BBC as well a couple of years ago, and I was really genuinely blown away by it. How he embraces the modern culture of cricket and just his mind for following the game. Like some people have that. Some people can just go out there and do it, and they can't talk about it, but he can. And yeah, and he's brilliant. I don't really have any major critiques. I think just because he had a tough season, I don't think Yorkshire will want to let him go. I still think he'll be back next year. I think he'll still be captain next year, and there's still a chance for him to put in performances in the county championship. So they'll be hoping that where they couldn't deliver in the blast, they might in the championship. But yeah, overall, like if we were being objective, it was a disappointing season by his standards, and he'll want to do better.
I'll pose a rather difficult question your way. Shan Masood is, great with the media. We've seen it time and again. He just has a knack for it. And given the turmoil that Yorkshire have gone through recently, is he the right sort of ambassador to be there at the helm?
I think so. I mean, I hosted an event that Yorkshire sort of had held just before the season started, and Sean was there, and just as you expect with the media, there were all these sort of like Yorkshire, Leeds, Bradford VIP type people. I mean, I don't know who they are, but they sort of business people, people connected to the club, investors, board members, players, and he was just so good at handling all of it. It's quite a multicultural, multifaceted room. You got sort of Pakistani businessmen, you've got like British iconic sporting figures who were there, Olympians were there, the women's
Hmm.
team, the Northern Diamonds who won the women's trophy the previous year. Like they were there as well. Like there were so many people, and he managed to engage with all of them quite in quite a way. Like he off the pitch totally fits the part. I think it's a very strong statement from Yorkshire as well that they want to kind of move away from that. And it's not just a token thing. It's not just because he's a brown man. I like to think anyway. Like it certainly helps that he's a brown man, but like that's not all it is. He's a very, very astute cricketer. Nobody's going to doubt his captaincy credentials. You know, if he had a stronger run in the international team, he could be in that conversation, right? But it's just not panned out that way for Sean over the last few years. Who knows where the future holds for him? But yeah, I think it's a tough spot, but he can certainly handle it. And you know, as off the pitch, he's handled himself with great grace.
Absolutely. And another Pakistan cricketer who I personally think really, really handles the media well is Pakistan's limited overs vice captain. Shadab Khan was there at the Vitality Blast this year. He was a Sussex shark. And bowling में तो चलो उस तरह की जिस तरह की आप शादाब से expect करते performance नहीं थी, even though he still managed to take around 12 wickets in 11 innings and his economy was under 10. But with the bat, we saw him, you know, single-handedly dismantle oppositions. 250s लगाई, बहुत तेज खेले, immense power hitting, I would say. 240 runs जो शहजाद खान के हैं, they were scored at 145 in this Vitality Blast. And you know, those whirlwind innings in the middle order, particularly, you know, versus the spinner, जिस तरह की उनकी batting prowess है, how good was he for Sussex?
He was outstanding. I think he was very, very strong. He gave a performance that fits his billing, his persona. His teammate Ravi Bopara, who's you know a very good friend of mine, he talked a lot to me about how much he enjoyed the time with Shadab, how impressed he was with Shadab, you know, how much of a natural cricketer he is, how he can do anything. You know, Ravi said he can do anything. He can bat, he can bowl, he can field, he could probably wicket keep, he can, you know, do the scoring, he can do everything. And he's got boundless energy, a great character. And very, very popular with the female and some of the male fans over in Brighton as well, where he played his cricket. So, you know, I think he was brilliant. Again, you know, ultimately you judge these things based on where you end up in the competition. So they didn't get to finals day. Sadly, none of the Pakistani players' teams did get to finals day, but his individual performances are very, very memorable. You know, I know that they because a lot of these games are live streamed on YouTube. So it's broadcast in a very strange way, the T20 Blast, because some games are on it's a bit like the Football Premier League. Some games are on TV, but the rest of them are live streamed by the counties independently, and some of them put more into their streams than others. But Sussex made a strong investment in their stream because they knew the traffic that was going to come, particularly from Pakistan. You know, on an average day without a Pakistani star or an Indian star, whatever, you might get, you know, couple of thousand, maybe 10, 15, 20,000. You know, they were constantly hitting the lakh territory, you know, when Shadab was batting, particularly in that match with Ravi Bopara where they got the, you know, the 100 partnership. So, like, you know, he's brilliant. Again, the measure of these players, we know they're great players. Did they win? You know, it comes back to that. Did they win? I think, you know, Shadab is again one of those players who's very, very valuable. You know, I know he's playing for San Francisco in Major League Cricket as well. And, you know, like those offers are going to keep coming his way everywhere but the IPL, I suppose. Maybe there as well one day. But, like, you know, he's demonstrated again why he's a world-class cricketer, a very, very valuable player to have, and certainly one of the best all-rounders in the world.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about that. Three-dimensional superstar, and I would say Pakistan's most valuable T20 asset. And if Sussex want to sign him again for another season, just even for the marketing bit, I'd say you should go in with the slogan "Shady Shark do 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 do." आतिफ आपने फेल कर दी है, ये आपने फेल कर दी। मैं आपको इम्प्रेस कर रहा था, आप कॉमेडियन है और आप हंसे भी नहीं।
नहीं, बहुत अच्छा, मैं अंदर हँसा हूँ। मैं अभी जहाँ पे बैठा हूँ ज़्यादा शोर नहीं मचा सकता, लेकिन अंदर से अंदर
कटवाऊंगा नहीं, मैं
अंदर हँसी
कटवाऊंगा नहीं,
थी।
फिक्र ना करें। अवाम के सामने भी जलील हो जाएंगे, कोई मसला नहीं। बट चलें आगे चलते हैं। इंटरेस्टिंगली इनफ बेस्ट लेग स्पिनर पाकिस्तान से जो थे शादाब खान नहीं थे इस सीजन, एंड यू कुड आर्ग्यू के जो उनके टीममेट हैं अब पाकिस्तान क्रिकेट में, उसामा मीर, हु हैज हैड अ फेनोमेनल राइज जब से यू नो वापस आए पहले पाकिस्तान की टीम में, बिकॉज ही हैड परफॉर्म्ड रियली वेल इन द पाकिस्तान कप। उसके बाद से हिज ट्रेजेक्टरी हैज जस्ट रिजन, यू नो, इनॉर्मसली। पहले पाकिस्तान के लिए परफॉर्म किया, मुल्तान के लिए वाज वेरी वेरी गुड, एंड फॉर वूस्टर ही वाज जस्ट अमेजिंग, यूड हैव टू से। बॉलिंग में तो 19 विकेटें ली 11 इनिंग्स में, एंड एट एन इकोनॉमी ऑफ 7.29, व्हिच इज क्वाइट अमेजिंग। I would say it's, you know, kahin pe bhi aap khel rahe ho, across any sort of venue, condition, surface, that is great for a leg spinner. And then also with the bat, 136 runs in 6 innings at 163, that is a bit insane. So talk to me about the rise of Osama and how much you enjoyed watching him this vitality blast.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching him. I think it's almost a shame. This sounds really cruel, but stay with me. It's almost a shame that he played for Worcestershire because it's one of the teams that doesn't have a great live stream,
Hmm.
and it doesn't have a huge fan base. It's not. There's nothing wrong with Worcestershire. They produce some great cricketers over the years. Of course, they have. Graham Hick comes to mind. Love Graham Hick, but they ultimately it is, and Moeen Ali played a lot of cricket there as well for several seasons. But it is ultimately a smaller county. Like it lives
Hmm.
somewhat in the shadow of Warwickshire slash Birmingham.
Hmm.
So, he didn't get that, press. Like I know on the
Hmm.
social media accounts, the Vitality Blast account, the Worcestershire account, the Worcester Rapids, or whatever they call it now, like they posted a lot of stuff and they were keen to build on his success. I mean, he's an outstanding cricketer. Let's talk about the cricket. Like, there's absolutely no doubt that his performance was phenomenal. People were struggling to read him. His economy, as you say, was brilliant. All those wickets in the 11 games he played, very impressive. Barely got a chance to bat. When he did perform with the bat as well, like outstanding. He wasn't supposed to be there as well. The crazy thing is he was there as cover. So,
Hmm.
the overseas player was going to be filled elsewhere and they were going to give him 4 games. He was supposed to be there for
Right.
4 games, but he was so good. They were like, we need more. We need more of this Osama Mir. Who is this Osama Mir? I don't know who his agent is, but they need to start selling him harder because, like his marketing needs to, his social media numbers, all of that stuff needs to match the skill, the talent that the man has because that's a huge part of the modern game now. A lot of these team owners look at social media and they're like, well, if we bring this guy in, especially with Pakistani players, half the appeal for them is commercial.
Hmm.
Pakistani players bring a lot of audience with them, a lot of eyeballs. I'm sure they'd love to have Indian players, but they're not as
Hmm.
readily available as Pakistani players are in England. So, Osama is great value. I'd love to see that commercial element match his skill set. And, he's still very much at the beginning of his career as well in that way. Like he's got a long and fruitful future ahead of him, we hope. So yeah, I was very pleased for him. Again, another very popular guy amongst his team.
Hmm.
People really like him, and yeah, it was great, brilliant season, very very good. I think second best out of all the Pakistanis this year for me.
Yeah, yeah. I would say best all-round performance for Pakistani, right? That goes without saying. I definitely think he pips Shadab in that regard. अच्छा, तो I think हमने सारी main performances की बात तो कर ली आतिफ भाई. We'll end this podcast now with a more general question. Now, these weren't the only Pakistanis on show. Of course, हम सबकी बात नहीं कर सकती, but we saw some thunderbolts by Naseem Shah. We saw a double wicket maiden by Imad Wasim. And then Zafar Gohar has been playing and performing for Gloucester for, oh, well, at least in the county season for a while now, right? So, how much flavor do you think all of these Pakistani players brought to the Vitality Blast? And how much did the competition benefit from having all of these guys around?
Oh, it benefited immensely. I think that went both ways as well. I think the players benefited as well. Like they really
Hmm.
enjoy being in England. There's a lot of support for Pakistani cricketers in England, not just from the Pakistani community that live here or expats or whatever, but just general fans. There's an affinity for Pakistani cricket and these players, and they're immensely talented. And some of the things that they're capable of, they're still considered like exotic in some way, by some
Hmm.
county fans. And yeah, I think it's wonderful when they're here because you know, it draws in a whole other audience. Like the T20 Blast, it's no secret. It's slightly underemphasized by the ECB because they push for the 100. They want to make the 100 the
Mm-hmm.
showpiece franchise event for English cricket. But the T20 Blast with its 18 teams, it becomes sort of like theoretically difficult for casual fans to engage with. I disagree with that. This is the thinking of
I do too.
it's the thinking of people above my pay grade. It's not like Pakistan यार जहाँ पे 50 बैंकों के नाम याद करने होते हैं वो वाली बात नहीं है इलाकों के नाम है बंदा याद कर लेता है. But anyway,
बिल्कुल.
like I think
Personally,
when
I always am more invested in the Vitality Blast as opposed to the 100. Something just doesn't sit well with me with respect to having a 100 ball innings. I don't know. मतलब obviously follow तो करते हैं, performances भी देख लेते हैं, मगर वो पता नहीं वो मजा ही नहीं आता. What is your take on that?
I'm one of the official broadcasters of the 100, so of course I think it's wonderful and amazing and one of the best tournaments in world cricket. Yeah, like obviously it's an adjustment for everybody. If it was up to me, I don't know if that's what I would come up with, but people above my pay grade have decided that this needs to be a
Hmm.
thing. So my job as a broadcaster is to do it to the best of my ability. You're right, it is a bit awkward to do the 100.
Hmm.
We'll talk about that in more detail and more tafsil another day. But like I think when it comes to the blast, like I really like यार उसकी भी अहमियत ना उठती है जब ये
Hmm.
Pakistani star players like there's not I know we talk about Zafar Gohar and like newcomers like Osama Mir and Zaman Khan, like they're all brilliant players, but like proper star players, we're talking about Shadab, we're talking about Shaheen, these guys, they come and they want to play in the T20 blast, so that lifts its value immediately.
Hmm.
It showcases its credibility to the world. And yeah, I think it's wonderful because more people watch the streams. It keeps people like me working, which is wonderful, and there'll be a lot of attention, even though there's no Pakistani players featuring on finals day as well, because people are interested now. Like I like that people in Pakistan are acutely aware of the counties in
Hmm.
England, like Worcestershire ये है और वो Yorkshire उधर है Glamorgan भी है और ये like I love it. I love
Hmm.
that kind of geography of England is kind of perforating in Pakistan because of cricket. And it sounds really silly, yaar, but like I remember back in the day, I learned American geography from WWE wrestling. क्योंकि हर
Hmm.
वीक को किसी मुख्तलिफ शहर में होते थे and अच्छा ये ब्रुकलिन है, अच्छा ये टेक्सास है, अच्छा ये Albany है, जो भी है, right? So like इसी तरह the value of this blast, there's more than just the cricket that's going on, even though, as I say, the Pakistani players bring in a lot of crowds, they bring in a lot of viewership, they certainly bring in sponsors and interest
Hmm.
from corporations and corporates and businesses and things like that. So it's been a win-win for everybody. And of course, Hassan Ali is the best case study,
Hmm.
for a player who's managed to use that experience to take himself back into national contention. But you could look at someone like Shaheen and say, well, my man's found his rhythm because he's
Yeah.
taken, he's doing all that stuff again. So it's been wonderful, and inshallah there'll be even more next season.
Hmm. This cross-cultural, exchange that you speak of, it kind of works both ways as well, right? PSL में हम देखते हैं, England stars come and play over here. Lots of them, they've built very solid relationships. They probably learn a hell of a lot when they come and play T20 franchise cricket in Pakistan. So you'd say that this relationship is going pretty well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it is because like I can't tell you, like Behram, I can't tell you how many English cricketers I've spoken to that have talked about wanting to go to Skardu.
Hmm.
लाइक मुझे खुद स्कर्दू के बारे में 5-6 साल पहले पता चला है। लाइक ये तो लोग एक्सपर्ट हैं। अच्छा नहीं I've heard about Skardu and I must go look at this photo of Skardu. Oh, and then that Gwadar cricket stadium, like they all know what that is. Like
Hmm.
it's wonderful because when these players come to Pakistan, these English players, again, social media, they just post all these wonderful pictures that everybody speaks very positively about their experiences, even when they don't have a positive experience. They, they'll say something very positive, which I think is great. And like they help kind of the marketing of the country. And Pakistani cricket's been isolated. Pakistani cricket's been left out in the cold a few times. It's been mismanaged, quite frankly,
Hmm.
on occasion as well. But when this kind of stuff, it really helps, not just, yeah, as you say, both ways. When Pakistanis come to England and show their stuff and add value, but equally by reselling the value of that to English cricketers who want to come and play in Pakistan, because we love having them over there as well. So yeah, it's been great. This England Pakistan connection is a very good thing, I think, for both cricketing setups.
Yeah, 100% concur. Or इसी Park Britain दोस्ती ने, it made us cross paths as well. Of course, you were over here. So we got to meet because of that as well. England meets Pakistan. And yeah, I guess it's a good note to end this show on. Atif bhai, thank you so much for appearing, taking out the time. You've been so generous with it. And it's always an absolute joy to talk cricket with you.
It's my pleasure, man. I'm very happy as it is with you. Like, ever since we met, I think, I really enjoy the work you do and everybody at Grassroots, actually. I was enjoying, that interview with Imam ul Haq that Hijab did as well
Mhm.
the other day. Just brilliant content, really insightful. So it's always nice to feature on there. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. God save the king.
Yeah. Well, it was our pleasure to have you over here as well. And thank you so much for those kind words. And yeah, you listen to Atif Bhai quality content. So go like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Grassroots Cricket. That'll be all for now. We'll catch you again soon enough. Bye bye.